Best thinking kept on. Somehow the general putative reasoning context now prevalent amongst black people is that there is one logic or one way of being right. Is this a safe and sound strategy for our survival as a species? We see the technology that our ancestors employed to do marvelous things. This is years and thousands of years ago. Look at how they cut all this structure deep into the ravine. One of two logic systems. Which one works? The one that created this, or the one that has Africa under the thumb of many other forces today? Our great black African ancestors always come out as the tremendously shrewdest humans. How did they attain such blazing heights? If you wish to dabble into their world, let us give this a try today together. Great thanks to my mentor, East Africa. How do we engage and gauge our overall thinking as Africans today? What makes our reasoning precise and true? Who has trained us to reason? The answer is we rely on logic. What is logic? Logic is the science of how to evaluate arguments and reasoning. Critical thinking is a process of evaluation which uses logic to separate truth from falsehood, reasonable from unreasonable beliefs. If you want to better evaluate the various claims, ideas, arguments you encounter, you need a better understanding of basic logic and the process of critical thinking. These aren't trivial pursuits. They are essential to making good decisions and forming sound beliefs about our world. Who should understand logic? But first, what is a logical fallacy? A logical fallacy is an inaccurate or intentionally misleading application of logic. It is important to be able to recognize logical fallacies to avoid being exploited or swindled by writers or speakers who want your money, your voice, or your vote. It is also important to avoid using logical fallacies in your own argumentation because honesty is an essential quality of effective persuasion. What is logic? We should understand logic. Logic is a method of reasoning that helps prove arguments. Our ancestors had logic. Our black people formulated logic. Logic works by assessing the accuracy of collection of statements. So our books, our holy books, must be logical. To be deemed logical, testing of such accuracy should occur in a sequence. What are the types of logic? Africans should understand their ancestral logic. How many types of logic do we have as Africans? There are two types of logical arguments. Worldly education and teaching on these. There is inductive reasoning, which is found in the courtroom, which is law, boardroom, the classroom, and throughout the media. Most but not all everyday arguments are based on inductive logic. Deductive reasoning is commonly found in natural sciences or hard sciences, less so in everyday arguments. This is what we need to learn as Africans. We need to adopt this. The first steps to crystal clear logical formulation is supreme abstract logic, which is based on who and what is God. Let us quickly say, do you know that African ancestors established the God concept? As regards to this, the Banyaranda quoted by Makweti as this to say, the world in which men are placed and which they know through their senses was created ex nihilo by Imana or Amen or Amunu or Hameno. The Rwanda word kurema means to produce, to make. We also have the word kurima in Bantu, in other Bantu languages, which means to farm, to produce, to grow. It is here rendered to create or bara because our informants say that there was nothing before Imana made the world. This belief concerning the origin of the material world is universal and clear. To any question on this point, the answer is ready. In Shona or Hebrew, it's bara or birth or bring forth. So that's the logical point, to bringing forth. There is nothing that goes beyond that. The caveat to watch. There are two actually different types of logic that exist and now that are operating in the universe. Yet we have been educated to believe that there is one logic or one way of being right. So these two are unconscious logic, which uses pronouns that are negative, thoughts of what exists, dreams and delusions or illusions, describing what doesn't exist as an unrealistic or useless school curricula, which we see today, which has produced this world as it is, which destroys nature, or which is very unproductive and very divisive and doesn't build a peaceful world. Conscious logic is the African logic of proper nouns, positive thoughts of what exists, realistic thinking, describing what exists as geometry, mathematics, and language. What must we adopt? So we have this basic structure of thinking that we have, which is based on to be alive. You must steer your free will and master it. So this is the African logic, the I am, or we, or us. That's the African conscious logic, which says everything started as energy and became energy, and atema, or atom, or melanin, or carbon became molecules that build all the structures or all the things that we see. So the goal of understanding this is a spiritual enlightenment that is based on the story of Ra and Ausati, which may be summarized as follows. So this is the logical position of how we develop our understanding, how we become aware of our surroundings. What we must understand is that unconscious logic emphasizes on the me aspect, which is worldly knowledge and is lower knowledge. A spiritual aspirant needs to become self-sufficient and capable of controlling his or her practical life. This means that a person should seek to learn the practical knowledge which will help them to survive in the practical world. That's the basic of education. Acquire this education today so that you can use it as practical education or practical proposition to acquire skills for the present, so that you can be able to sustain this practical reality and this practical life. So that's the basic physical education at the lower level. Having done this, the aspirant needs to always remember that worldly knowledge is lower knowledge. It is used to sustain the practical reality. That's all we have. Entrepreneurship or that. But what comes out of that philanthropic act that comes out of being a millionaire or billionaire, that's a different aspect, provided it is channeled away from the me or the unconscious logic. This is what is there, the Platonian, the European, the Western kind of knowledge. This is what is there. How much money do you have? What education do you have? That's what it is. But that's not the right one. It's a lower level vibration. And the aspirant must go up to I am, conscious logic. Aspiration is the awakening of the spiritual self that is becoming conscious of the divine presence within oneself and the universe by having faith that there is a spiritual essence, which we have alluded to above, the concept of the divine. Beyond ordinary human understanding, it implies a desire to engage in spiritual study and self-discovery. Aspiration also means seeking after spiritual truth through the various disciplines that we have in this world. Because of melanin synthesis, the breathless individual thinks or identifies self, heaven, God in his or her cortex by self-reflection of reality or positive thoughts about oneself. Everything else is illusionary other than that. So you can read more on this ninth mind, on this melanin, how it operates, and this carbon, how it operates. African logic based on proper nouns or positive thinking about oneself and about reality forms the true geometry, mathematics, science, computers, and language. The last time Africans used this normal logic as a curriculum in school was in 420 before Common Era in Carthage in Africa. So the prefrontal cortex and frontal lobe depicted with this snake on the forehead, aureus on the forehead, proves that we are connected. We must use our prefrontal cortex for thinking. A civilization identity depends on the exact definition and functions of its reality perceived via its brain anatomy and chemistry. Chemistry harm our mysteries. A creature must have the ability to form electrical signals in a cortex type brain, which is spiritual or spirit or talking spirit in our brain, using its own brain chemistry. If it is to be classified as human, here is how to tell the real human from the fake, the programmed one. So a real human self-identification, the African human must say we. If programmed, it says me. We want to give examples here. Examples of the me-programmed mentality is an unconscious state. This is a logical trap. The Berlin Conference, the nationalistic blindness that I am a Zimbabwean, that I'm a Mozambican, that I'm a Nigerian, that I'm a South African. This is what we call sovereignty stupidity. So the Berlin Conference and the Scramble for Africa 1884-1885 is the one that has built your thinking if you are still identifying yourself as a nationalist. If your passport, if your nation, where you come from still defines you, you are under a logical trap. You are programmed. You are a me. Me, I'm a Zimbabwean. No, I am an African. I am a black person. You have to put it in a broad context. So European powers met and divided up Africa for themselves. So they have divided you for themselves. If you could control it, you could have it. So they control you, they have you. Interested in resources and markets for products, they are interested in you as a resource, as an energy plant for themselves. Your thinking, your me is not African. It is British, it is French, it is Belgian, it is Spanish, it is Portuguese, it is German, it is European, it is Chinese. It is not you. So therefore you are colonized, there you are a slave, and therefore you are not a free entity, you are a programmed entity. So your logic and your thinking is not freely yours. China is to recolonize Africa due to the me effect that prevents collective defense. Still today, over 15 countries are still paying colonial tax to France, and they are starving their own people. So you need to look and read the package principle to see that the $60 billion Chinese grant is just a lunch for them, a lodge for them, and it's going to destroy us because we are not united and we can't logically defend ourselves. So back to a real logic. We have been conditioned to reason in such a way as to be unaware that our passage through this life is a school where consciousness must through morality enrich its knowledge. Ancient black philosophers knew that nature teaches us through its symbols to awake to conscious living. How can we do this? Through self-hypnosis and repetition of rituals in their cyclic calendar. Hence the complexity of totems and a plethora of rituals, now deemed primitive. Yet learning is not only the ABC of language or mathematics, enabling logical deductions, but conscious reality of the sacredness of all around our village. Thus, in life, the village is also a training ground. Knowledge alone never justifies our existence, even the miseries of its contingencies, but conscious logic will lead us. We conclude with the real functional logic, which is based in culture, which says it takes a village to raise a child, and also epistemological knowledge, metaphysics, ethics, and politics, which is liberation or ideologies and struggles, and aesthetics, which is the status of African art. God Anansi Kokroko, the stupendous spider. Now the spider is associated with ingenuity in designing, and the designation is clearly a metaphorical articulation of notion of God as the great designer. Surely somebody must be responsible for the world. Were you not brought forth into this world by your parents? And were they not in turn by their parents and so on? Must there not therefore be somebody who was responsible for everything? This is the logical steps that we have going back, and we come to the original ancestor and to the creator of our ancestor. Every household has a father, every town a country, a king. Surely there must be someone who rules the whole universe. In this last connection, a very common Akan saying comes to mind, namely, God is king. Onyame nehe nehe. Mysteries of Isis and Ra, studying and applying the wisdom teachings. Studying and applying the wisdom teachings implies practicing the teachings in day-to-day life. It means seeing beyond the opposites and understanding the underlying essence of creation. Inquiring into who am I? We, not me. There is no more powerful question which a spiritual aspirant can ask other than who am I? Everything in life depends on one's ego. But if you ask the question, who am I? It becomes clearer and clearer that the ego is not the real you, and everything that the ego wants is illusory. This spiritual discipline or practice allows a spiritual aspirant to gradually free himself or herself from the snare of egoism and ignorance or unconscious logic. Single-minded determination to know the highest truth is the right of the aspirant who intellectually desires to understand who am I, or the nature of the divine, which we have elaborated in this saying. Committee Hebrew ethics, self-service breeds self-preservation of our tribe. Priest Teacher Rabbi L.M. Dumizulu, contact us on this email, lmdumizulu@gmail.com. Subscribe to our channel, Committee Hebrew Ethics. Also visit us on livespiritofAmen.com website. Thank you, Siyabonga, Tatenda, Priest Teacher Rabbi L.M. Dumizulu. Subscribe to Committee Hebrew Ethics. Thank you. Goodbye.